Welcome, travelers. We're aware that your journey was difficult, but prepare to have your questions answered, for you have been granted an audience with the Masters of Modern.
And welcome back to Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, sometimes, Michael Grothy.
Hello, everyone.
So where's Ben today?
I don't know.
It's New Jersey.
He's in New Jersey.
He's in New Jersey. So, lots of stuff's going on. We're doing an episode today kind of reviewing two things. We have the first half of the episode that is going to be a little bit focused on how War of the Spark has currently been affecting Modern. Quickly get that out of the way. Talk a little bit about the banning and restriction announcement that happened earlier this week. There was nothing for Modern. There was a ton of stuff for Pauper. Yeah. And then we're going to do some first looks at Modern Horizons and all the awesomeness going there. Big heads up, our preview episode is next week. It'll be on the 27th. So 9 a.m. 27th. Preview episode goes live.
Monday. That's Monday,
which
right?
is Monday.
Very exciting preview card.
Very exciting preview card. I made the statement on the internet that it is the best preview card we've ever previewed. You said that with Fatal Push existing, maybe not. We've also previewed Path and Inquisition to Kozilek, but all those are the same card. They just are one mana kill a thing. This doesn't, well, you don't know what this does yet, so we'll show you that next week. Super excited. Otherwise, in shout-outy things, there's a big shout-out thing, so why don't we let that play right now. If it didn't play because I'm not editing that in this way, you guys will get to hear this moment. But make sure to check out the Command Zone. They are our sister podcast. They make awesome content every week. Commander focused. They did their preview card this week. They previewed Urza, which is definitely a card we're going to be talking about.
That is a nice preview card.
I'm pretty sure it is just Ben's Invitational card, the card, which we'll talk about then. So definitely check out the Command Zone. They're at collected.company, which is the same website you can find us. If you want to find our website version of us, make sure also to subscribe on iTunes and on the YouTube channel, especially if you're watching right now. Subscribe. There's a little bell next to the subscribe button. Press that so you get alerts, and then comment what card you're most excited about for Modern Horizons. Other shout-out things. I'm on Twitter. We are at the MMCast. I am personally at Kess Wiley.
I'm at Dudard, D-U-D-A-R-D-D.
And then we have, last but not least, a Patreon. Make sure to go check that out. It is how we are able to accomplish all of these goals. It is one of the main sources of income we have. Obviously, there's commercials that you're hearing right now that are part of that. But for the most part, the significant amount of money we get comes from that Patreon. And all of the people on there are super helpful. You can also get our Lifelinker code there. I just posted up an updated version of it. So if you have the Lifelinker app and want to get it, you need to be a patron. But then you get it on our Patreon. So check that out. And thanks for Jimmy and Josh again for putting off Lifelinker. That app's really great. It's a great little life total counter thing, and it's good for multiplayer and regular competitive play, which is what we're about here. And so that's all the shout outs. Now we're on to the episode. Today we're talking about all of the insane things. Let's maybe start with the ban and restriction announcement.
Okay.
So the first thing is in Pauper, which is not as relevant to us, but is relevant to this conversation. They banned a lot of cards. Gush, Foil, Daze, and Gitaxian Probe. Did they unban Gush a few years ago? Is that a thing that happened? Or did they print Gush into common? Or is Gush
No, it was originally
a
a common.
Okay.
I think it's always been a thing. I haven't been paying super close attention to Pauper.
Okay. Where did they unban Gush? They unbanned it somewhere. Or unrestricted it in Vintage, maybe? Or maybe they restricted it.
I think they unrestricted it in Vintage at some point.
Okay, got it. All right,
know.
Who knows? Yeah. Okay, so those are all things that happened. Gitaxian Probe, is it banned and restricted in more formats than any other Phyrexian Mana spell? Or no, Mental Misstep exists. But then that?
It's not. So it's banned. It's the only card to be banned in everything and restricted in Vintage in a long time. Because Mental Misstep is not restricted in Vintage.
Okay, so it's just the first card in all of those things.
Ancestral Recall is banned in everything and restricted in Vintage, but yeah.
No, but it's not legal in Modern. It wouldn't be legal if
it
it wanted to be. So there's a very specific subset.
It's on the ban list for all these formats then. Sure. Okay, yeah.
I think it might be the only one.
I think it might be.
Which is crazy. That
little
card
printed on the ban list in Modern, Legacy,
and Vintage. Well, and
Pauper,
restricted in Vintage and
then
Pauper.
Restricted in Vintage.
Yeah. Congratulations, Gitaxian Probe. Apparently, you're just slightly too good, but slightly too good everywhere.
Yep.
Free spells are bad for you as a Magic player. And actually, that's kind of everything else they banned. Every card they got rid of is a free spell.
Yeah.
Gush, Foil, Daze, Gitaxian Probe. Goodbye, all of you. Yeah. didn't they? Oh no,
I
it's
don't
just
think they
Gush,
did.
Gitaxian Probe, and Daze, and then their statement was that Gush made foil problematic.
Yeah.
Yep, sorry, I was wrong. I don't know anything about Pauper. People like Pauper.
Yeah.
It's a format that's very popular that doesn't get enough support. You heard it here first, and every other place that has talked about Pauper. More important to Master of Modern fans and the people that listen to this podcast, there were no changes to Modern. Now, we're in a weird moment where the Pro Tour didn't have any of the new cards in it. The Pro Tour itself had a new mulligan rule that modified the format to being kind of different than it normally would be. War of the Spark came out, which is talked about as being the most powerful set since Urza's block. I think that's a grandiose statement because like New Phyrexia came out in between those two moments, as did Khan's.
What
Dark
set
Tier.
is Gitaxian Probe from? Can you remember?
Skarsmiridan?
No, it's New Phyrexia.
No, it's, no, wait, Urza's set. Urza block.
Oh.
Yeah. Where did Days come out?
Days is from Nemesis.
Okay, so
it was
no.
the block after.
Yeah. So that's a depowered block too, right? Ish.
It still had some free spells that were
Yeah,
problematic, like Foil and Gush and Unmask, which is a big legacy one.
Yeah,
Unmask,
fair.
Land Grant.
So 2 cards from Nemesis got banned, or Nemesis block, which is Mask's block,
Yeah, it's Mask's block.
Max block.
Days is from Nemesis. Gush, I think, is from Masks.
Okay. Don't print free spells is I think the, like, speaking of which, we'll get into that later today. But so it's and Modern Horizons is coming out was kind of the last thing. So we're like in this
there's
weird
like super huge shakeups to the Modern format. It doesn't make sense to ban anything right now because the shakeups aren't done yet.
Right. I
We're
mean,
in
like-
the middle
like
of all the shakeups.
3 months ago, 2 months ago, maybe even a month ago, depending on what date today is and when the Pro Tour was, the entire world was on a let's ban cards out of Phoenix because it's problematic
Faithless
train.
Looting.
And then right now, Faithless Looting hasn't shown up in a top 8 or in significant numbers at least for a while.
No, that's not true. Arclight Phoenix is still putting up results.
Yeah, it still
with,
definitely is
with
that.
basically no War of the Spark cards except maybe a Saheeli.
But
in the main or
it's
the
no
side.
longer 5 for pieces of it.
Yeah. There's other decks that are succeeding in part on the backs of War of the Spark cards.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Karn the Great Creator.
Yes, which we'll get into. But so basically, Wizard says in a watch list almost, and I'm just going to read the quote. We're aware of some concerns about combos in Modern based around War of the Spark cards, such as Neoform plus Allosaur Rider, Ujin's Conjurant plus Celestial Kirin, and Karn the Great Creator plus Mycosynth Lattice. We've been monitoring the play rates and win rates of these decks, and so far don't see cause for alarm. With the release of Modern Horizons and the Mythic Championship 4 right around the corner, we'll continue to observe the evolution of the Modern metagame. So from their perspective, I think it's just too early to really look at things, which is totally fair and I think correct. The one card combo that they're not talking about is Days Undoing and Narset, and then just Narset and Teferi in general making control much stronger because Esper control in general has been showing up much stronger finishes since the War of the Spark
and
was
I've
released.
seen like blue-white decks and Esper by extension because Esper is basically a blue-white deck with like a handful of black cards.
Right.
But the blue-white control decks, blue-white based control decks, I've seen them playing up to 4 Narsets, up to 4 Teferi, new 3-mana Teferi, and up to like 2 Saheeli. So
Right.
I've seen like these blue-white decks with just like 12 Planeswalkers because they're playing like Jason Mind Sculptor Teferi, new Teferi, Narset, Saheeli, and there's
And I'm
just
assuming
like-
some of them are like Ashiok is still seeing some play out of the sideboards, and you have the old Kaya that started seeing play.
Yeah,
out of
Kaya
sideboards.
Orzhov Usurper
Yeah.
I've seen a little bit of.
So like definitely Esper got the most of like the Walker theme added to it, and then
Yeah.
all these other ones are getting powerful cards too. So it definitely we're in a moment of shakeup. It also is possible just like all these decks are a wash. I do think based on results and what I've seen so far and just the power level and talking about the Karn the Great Creator seems the most problematic to me of those.
I agree with that, and that's because it's colorless. Like,
Right.
they're always aware of when they print, like, an overly powerful colorless card or combination of cards because you can just put it into any deck, and it can just homogenize the format where, like, you know, every deck that's looking to have 4+ mana is just going to be playing Karn the Great Creator.
Right.
Like, he's starting to show up in Amulet Titan decks. He's starting to show up in Valakut decks. He's starting to show up in... the original deck is Tron, which makes the most sense because you can, you know,
Get
have
all
a
the
ton of
pieces
mana.
you need, right.
Oh, but the Karn combo is with Mycosynth Lattice.
Yeah, so Karn can find Mycosynth Lattice out of the sideboard, and then if Mycosynth Lattice is in play, your opponent can't tap their mana, so they're locked out of the game. So as long as they don't have a threat that can attack them, they lose.
Right, and all it takes is one sideboard slot dedicated to Mike's Synclatus.
Right.
And then you also get the utility of just having like Grafdigger's Cage in your sideboard, and you have a Walking Ballista in your sideboard.
Is another card that's got a lot of benefit because it's like the worst version of Mycosynthelatus for decks that can't get to the 10 mana or 7 mana needed for Mycosynthelatus to be pulled off in the same turn.
Yeah, and you get, one Pithing Needle in your sideboard. You get a lot of utility out of Karn, but then the fact that you can, if you get to 6 mana, just win.
Right. And he's generically fine to play. Like, he makes if you're playing with any artifacts already, he makes them into threats. He also shuts down other artifact decks from
but that's not
cards,
the problem,
like Affinity
right?
and Hardened Scales are problem. Yeah. It's
like
more
that's not the
ability.
problem. Like if it was just big mana artifact decks like Tron that were playing Karn because now they can turn their like rando artifacts into beaters, then that's. I mean, I guess Tron doesn't really even have any good targets, but. Theoretically, if there were some big like Tron that was playing more artifacts, mana rocks and stuff, you could be like attacking with your.
Well, it could do the like old, like the fair version of what to do with this card is having the old. What's the tap make a permanent into an artifact?
Liquid metal coating.
I've
seen liquid metal coating out of sideboards with Karn.
Yeah.
You just have one in your sideboard because you just dedicate one sideboard slot.
And it's cheaper than.
But the problem with Karn is not that he's good in artifact decks. I think that would be fine. The problem is that it's getting to the point where he's good in all decks.
Yeah.
All decks that can reliably hit 4 and sometimes can hit 6.
Right. And even if you can't hit Mycosynthelatus, a 4 mana wish card that also presents a threat and then gets you any answer to any deck and matchup you want in game one is like already problematic, I think. And then you add the fact that it also is like a miserable gameplay lockout moment.
There is an artifact sideboard card for pretty much every matchup.
Right.
So so yeah, like Karn just is like an amazing main deck card even without like lockout combos.
Right.
But you also just have a lockout combo.
And so like of the cards listed, I think that's like the first one. The other one is before we move on to that, because I do want to mention this, it's interesting to me that in a Karn mirror matchup, which is just like a serious conversation that happens regularly, the matchup is about who draws the least amount of cards, because if both players have Karn in play with a Mycosynthelatus in play, it's just whoever you count your decks and whoever has the least amount of cards.
Yeah, or race to Karn. It just depends. Like if you stick a Karn and get Mycosynthelatus, and then on their turn they stick a Karn, well now you have to like think about whether it's worth playing. Right. But if you can just draw the Karn before they do, then you win. You get to win.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's lame. This
is a good gameplay. Like this is kind of close to the old Jace days in Cobblade and Standard, where people started playing Baby Jace just because it was a removal spell for their first Jace.
Yeah, because back then, if it was planeswalkers with the same planeswalker subtype, which is just all the planeswalkers' first name. So if there was a Jace anywhere on the battlefield, and somebody played another Jace,
changes. Yeah.
Yeah, there's been a few legend rule changes.
So legend rules changed where it used to be that if you have a legend in play and a legend of the
legends don't matter.
If you have a planeswalker in play and you have a planeswalker that enters play, your opponent plays it of the same name, they both die.
Right. So if I have Jace Beleren on turn 3 and I'm on the draw, I go turn 3. Now it's your turn 4. You play your 4th mana. You play Jace the Mind Sculptor. Both Jaces would die.
Yeah.
So people were playing like 3 or 4 Jace Beleren so that you could stick it on the draw before your opponent played Jace the Mind Sculptor, so that they would have to.
And then you would draw a card off Jace, and either they let you have a card draw engine with Jace Beleren in play, or play their Jace to kill your Jace, and you were up by a mana and
it was like a matchup without a lot of creatures. So what would often happen is you just minus your Jace Beleren 3 times to draw 3 cards. It would die, and then on the turn that it died, that's when you play your Jace Mind Sculptor.
Yeah. So that's what's happening with Karn. It's relatively miserable gameplay.
Luckily your Karn doesn't. Kind of luckily your Karn doesn't kill the opponent's Karn, but also not luckily because you run into this situation where it's like, oh well, now I have a Mycosynthelatus and we both just take no game actions. Who has the biggest deck?
Yeah, I guess that ends it quicker because you can just count your deck sizes and end.
The technology is bored into 61.
Yeah,
in the Karn mirrors.
You might not be wrong. You can do that now, right? That's because you used to not be able. Your sideboard had to be 15 cards at all times.
Yeah. As long as you have. I don't remember that rule. Everybody just plays 60-15. There is technically rules in place that allow you to sideboard out. Like if you register a 61 card deck, you can have a 14 card sideboard and you can board out one card and not board anything in as long as your sideboard is still only 15.
Got it. Okay.
Something like that.
That's crazy. That's weird.
I remember that when they announced this as a thing you could do, there were people speculating whether it was better to like play some sideboard cards main and then board them out for nothing or something weird like that. I don't know. I think that's the rule. Somebody's going to look it up and tell me if I'm right or not.
Please tell us, Twitter, if we're right on how this works.
But the thing is, it's such a corner case situation because most people are just playing their 60 card deck with 15 sideboard cards. But I believe you can also sideboard in more than you sideboard out, as long as when you start your match, there are only 15 cards in your sideboard. You can't like register a 61 card deck, a 15 card sideboard, and board out into 16 card sideboard. You have to have, when you start, like when you present your deck, there has to be 15 or less cards in your sideboard. There can't be more than that, even if you have a 60 card deck.
Got it. Okay.
But it's pretty corner case. Everybody just play a 60 card deck with a 15 card sideboard, please.
Yeah, this is not good advice. The next card to talk about is the Allosaur Rider and
Cold Snap cards.
Neoform. Sorry.
Regular listeners will know the way I feel about Cold
Snap
Snap
cards. Can you explain to
new?
Oh, you ranted it last time.
I ranted about it last time with Ben. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so if you want to hear about why Michael thinks that Cold Snap is the worst thing ever created, go
Cold
to
Snap's a net negative
the last
for Magic
episode.
as a whole. If Cold Snap, if Thanos snapped Cold Snap out of existence, all Cold Snap cards disappeared.
You'd be happy.
It would be good. Yeah.
Do you think Cold Snap is more of a net negative onto Modern than 8th edition, or is 8th edition worse? 8th/9th.
Well, 8th and 9th are pretty bad, but part of it is that those cards get to still be legal. Like a lot of Cold Snap's big offenders are like not legal, or a piece of their combo is not legal. Like Dark Depths is banned. That's a big net negative, I think. And then you have
I think you can include
Counterbalance and Top. Top is banned, luckily, but like Counterbalance is a card that probably should never have been printed.
Yep.
I also am not a fan of Allosaurus Rider. I'm also not a fan of Mishra's Bauble.
Is Allosaur Rider another free card?
We'd be better off if Mishra's Bauble. Yeah, Allosaurus Rider is a free card. And Mishra's Bauble, which I'm not a fan of. I mean, actually, I get it. It's probably not unhealthy for the format, but honestly, Mishra's Bauble could just stop existing. I'd be fine with that. It's a free cantrip.
Yeah.
We just talked about a free cantrip that got banned everywhere. And it lets you look at the top card of your opponent's library.
And Delirium. Trigger.
That's pretty close to a Gitaxian Probe.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit worse, so it doesn't get the axe, but
you're off of it.
I'm not a fan of Mishra's Bauble.
Okay.
It's on thin ice with me.
So Neoform and Allosaurus Rider, people who don't know what they do. So Neoform is blue and a green. You can sacrifice a creature and get a creature into play that is one bigger, plus it gets a +1/+1 counter. So it's like a birthing pod on a spell. Allosaurus Rider is 7 mana for a 4/4.
No, it has power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control.
Okay.
I believe.
I'm looking it up to get the exact wording so I don't mess this up.
It has power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control, which is to, mean if you put it into play on turn 1, it's usually not good. And then you can exile 2 green cards from your hand instead of paying its mana cost. So then you just have, like, if you do this on turn 2, you're like, haha, check out my 2/2. But it is a 7-drop, so you can Neoform it into a Griselbrand.
Yes, and then you have a Griselbrand on turn 1 and then win because the deck is playing. So there's the Griselbrand decks have been around for a while, but basically the combination of really big green creatures and the green shoal. So we have the blue shoal behind me that lets you exile a card of the same color to pay for the X cost, basically. So you basically gain
another free card.
Yeah, another free card. You gain 15 life off of it, exiling a
you
big
exile like
dude.
a Worldspine Worm or an Autochton Worm or something.
Yeah,
it's one of these like 11+ drop creatures.
Right, and then so you gain that much life, which then so you draw that many cards off of Griselbrand. That generally includes another one of the shoals plus another one of these giant green creatures that keep going it. So you draw your whole deck, and then you can kill them with lightning.
I don't remember how the Neoform decks are killing.
It was the Lightning Storm, right?
Yeah,
Lightning
there's like
Storm.
a few different ways to kill. You can kill with Lightning Storm. So the Goryo's Vengeance decks usually kill with
Borborygmos.
Putting Borborygmos into play. That's like the old version of this deck was using Goryo's Vengeance. But the thing about Goryo's, they were playing Goryo's Vengeance and Through the Breach. And those decks are still around, actually.
Yeah,
and they're now playing Ilharg, too. But those decks they have to use the graveyard for one thing, and they're a little bit slower because you have to like discard and then reanimate. So like there's a few more moving pieces as opposed to Neoform, where you just have to like put Allosaurus Rider into play and Neoform it for 2 mana.
And you add to the fact that you have a graveyard interaction where everyone's playing main deck Surgical Extraction. So like there's way more ways to interact
because
with
you use your
Griselbrand
graveyard.
decks. That's one of the reasons they're playing Ilharg, is because he is an alternative to having to use the graveyard.
You just play him for 5, but you can do the whole reanimator thing with him, or through the breach him, or like he synergizes with everything you're doing, and also you could just play him for 5 mana and be like, all right,
here's a giant
kill my pig.
But yeah, so Lightning Storm, which is a weird card. Which set is this from? Which set is?
I believe it's from Cold Snap.
Yeah, it's from Cold Snap. Red, colorless, instant. Lightning Storm deals X damage to target creature or player, where X is 3 plus the number of charge counters on it. When you cast it, it's an instant. Discard a land card to put 2 charge counters on Lightning Storm. You may choose a new target for it, and any player may play this ability, but only if Lightning Storm is on the stack. This card has a lot of words that are dumb on it, but basically it allows you to discard lands to multiply this to be basically lethal.
So it looks like these decks, the Neoform decks are playing. They're not playing Lightning Storm. They're playing Borbringmas Enraged, which you can also just put into play off of Neoforming an Allosaurus Rider once you've drawn your whole deck.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Or because he is also an 8-drop, and he allows you to throw lands for 3 damage. They're also playing 1 Seismic Assault, which you can cast using Simian Spirit Guides. Is at least this particular victory condition in this list.
So there's a bunch of different ways to kill people that don't use the graveyard, which is really the most relevant thing to this point. But it allows you to, through using Manamorphose and Simian Spirit Guide, win on turn 1.
Yeah.
So on turn 1, you cast Simian Spirit Guide plus play a land.
And these decks are playing like Summoner's Pacts to find Allosaurus Riders or Spirit Guides or whatever piece you're missing, and then they're playing like Serum Visions and
other ways to just tutor for stuff. But basically, if you have a Neoform in your hand, you are very likely to win on turn 2 or 1. Or 2 for sure, and then 1 is possible.
Oh, they're playing Chancellor of the Tangle?
Yes, so you get the extra mana. Oh, so yeah, that's one of my great specs of all time. We haven't talked about this on the podcast yet. So Travis Wu, who is problematic for all the different reasons, 5 years ago did a Charbelcher list that I think also Corbin Hauser did deck techs on. That was basically using four Chancellor of the Tangle, which is a ley line effect. If it's in your opening hand, you can reveal it to make 1 green mana, and was playing 4 Simian Spirit Guide and some other ways to get mana for free into play on turn 1 enough to be able to get a Goblin Charbelcher out into the world. And then Goblin Charbelcher, if you have no lands in your deck or minimal of them, can kill your opponent by being in play. This is a legacy deck that they were trying to port into Modern. But when 2 people posted videos about it, and then Chancellor of the Tangle at the time was like 25 cents. And so I bought 30 25-cent Chancellor of the Tangles.
How long ago was this?
5 years ago.
Okay.
So I've just every time I go through cards to find cards for the last 5 years, I would just eventually hit the Chancellor of the Tangle pocket that would just have 20 foils and 30 non-foils, and just well, this card is never going to be worth anything, and then move past it. Finally, they're worth $6 now. So
did you sell out?
Not yet. I haven't had an opportunity to get somewhere to sell out, but super excited. Chancellor of the Tangle is making
it's
a
also
difference.
just a big
green dude that you can exile with.
Big green dude that you can exile.
He's a 7-drop, right? So he is a 7 cards worth of life, which is all that matters. Yeah, so that's the point. Allosaurus Rider is also that. They've added a bunch of these big green creatures that lets you do this, that also lets you turbo out a turn 1 win. So, and Manamorphose can be cast off of both Simian Spirit Guide and
Lightning Storms too.
Yeah.
Now I'm looking at Neo brand lists to see interesting differences. We should move on a little bit probably. But so this is a deck that Wizards is keeping their eye on because it kills very fast. It's not incredibly consistent. It's not the type of thing that's putting up tons of tournament results, but it's just one of those decks that's so fast that having to tune your deck to beat this deck is just not really
realistic,
feasible. It's not realistic to tune your deck to beat this, but also beat everything else that's going on in the format, because they're just turn 1ing you, and what do you You know?
How do you beat? I mean, like, you'd have to play. Yeah, it's hard. I mean, now there are new tools being added to the format that help with that. And we'll get into some of the Modern Horizons conversation. And I think today's episode, because this section is taking as long as it will be a little bit about which new cards might help in these situations. We'll do greater Modern Horizons reacts as full episodes later on. But yeah, the fact that it's kind of like the Amulet Titan decks when they had the ban cards out of it originally, where the problem with that deck is it wasn't really winning on turn 2 that often, and in fact the results
unless
of it
you were
winning,
stacking the top 7 cards of your library.
the results where it was winning that often on turn 2 were skewed because the main person doing that regularly was
the guy
cheating.
who top aided the GP with it. Yeah.
So ignoring that result, but it was infrequently enough warning on a turn that just the format is not structured to be able to defend against, partially because there's no force of will, there's no days, there's no early interaction that is generically good, and so no one was playing with ways to really interact with those combos. And Wizards has expressed that they would like Modern to be a turn 4 format. Now it's really a turn 3.5 format, I think, is a safer way to put it, is where they've allowed it to be. But even with that in mind, a turn 1, turn 2 deck is something that just the format I don't think is built to really withstand very easily.
Yeah, even if it's not incredibly consistent.
And then the third combo that they mentioned before we get into the blue-white one is the Ugin's Conjurant combo, which hasn't put up a lot of results, but it is... So Celestia Kirin is a card that was printed in Kamigawa.
Saviors of Kamigawa. One of the worst sets in Modern, probably. But it has a lot of expensive cards because it was so bad nobody bought it. But.
2 white, Celestial Kirin. It is a legendary creature, Kirin Spirit. It is a 3/3, flying. Whenever you play a spirit or arcane spell, destroy all permanents with that spell's converted mana cost. The key thing is it's just permanents. It's not non-land permanents. So up to this point, there has not been a spirit that you could cast for free.
Well, I mean, but not with... converted mana cost 0 is the key, right? Even if you're like
cheating into play,
cascading into a spell queller with Bloodbraid Elf, which sounds terrible. You have to exile your own Bloodbraid Elf. That'd be pretty sad. But if you were cascading into spell queller with Bloodbraid Elf for some reason in your 4-color weird deck, it's still converted mana cost 3, even if you're not paying mana for it.
So Ugin's Conjurant, so people get it, is an X cost colorless Spirit Monk. It's Ugin's signature card from War of the Spark. It is a Spirit Monk 0/0. Ugin's Conjurant enters the battlefield with X+1/+1 counters on it. If you damage would be dealt to Ugin's Conjurant while it has a +1/+1 counter on it, prevent that damage and remove that many +1/+1 counters from Ugin's Conjurant. None of that matters. The main fact is that it is basically a X spell that you can, with Celestial Kirin in play, cast for 0, blowing up all lands in play, effectively being an Armageddon.
It just comes in as 0/0 and dies, but you blow up all lands.
And you have a 3/3 flyer in play.
And realistically, with Ugin's Conjurant, you can also blow up all 1-drops against humans, or 2-drops, or something like that.
Very
like
efficient,
you can, it's like build your own engineered explosives, except you can also use it to blow up all lands for 0.
Yes. So this hasn't really shown up, and I think this is partially because of what we just discussed. The last 2 combos and the fourth thing we'll talk about are all so powerful that this like small little combo hasn't really shown anything. The one thing that this does have going for it is that Spirit Tribal is a deck in Modern and has been. So it has a deck that it can very easily, conveniently slide into. Both of these cards are pretty decent with the cards that are in that in general, regardless.
I mean, Ugin's Conjurant is like pretty below rate, and the Kirin can hose you. Like, especially in an Aether Vial deck like Spirits, you're playing like a high density of like 2 and 3 drops. Cast.
Okay.
It's a high density of 2 and 3 drops.
Sure.
So if you have 2 2-drops on board, you have a Supreme Phantom and a Rattle Chains on board, and you have then you play Kirin, and then you have another 2-drop. You're like,
Yes. No. It's definitely not the best fit, but both of those cards are fine in that deck and are taking a benefit of things that deck is doing, and it has a powerful effect. And that powerful effect, I think, is worth maybe losing some of the non-bows that exist.
Yeah, and I've seen some more all-in like Kirin,
Celestial Kirin decks that aren't taking advantage of spirits.
And like those are the ones that I think are not putting up results, but it's like it is a combo that people are experimenting with that, is very powerful and uninteractive in that you blow up your opponent's lands and they can't do anything anymore.
Right. So of the cards that we've just talked about, which one of them, before we get into the control conversation, which cards do you think are really presenting the problem? And if there was a ban that was going to happen on these cards, because that's what we're talking and that's what Wizards kind of brought them up. I think
Karn being colorless and just like we could enter a world where like everybody is either like a super fast deck But every deck that is looking to hit 4 mana that isn't like a super fast deck is just playing Karn.
Yeah.
Like Humans and Phoenix and like these decks that are looking to operate off of 2-3 lands, Karn isn't good there.
Right.
But every deck that's looking to hit 4 mana just needs to be playing Karn the Great Creator because of its flexibility.
That's almost happened already. I've even seen Esper control decks that are starting to play Karn.
Yeah, so I think that's unhealthy. The Neoform combo is pretty inconsistent, and like we've seen people be like, Grishal Brand is a turn 2 deck. Why is this still allowed? And like, so is Neoform. But because neither of them are putting up like big results, they're both kind of just like Magic Online bogeymen, where like sometimes you play against them and they get the nut draw and you just die. But they're not like putting up results at big events.
No, there haven't been that many big events to really start showing
because
some
they're
of
inconsistent.
This,
well, that's true, but like at the Magic Online competitive. Like the Magic Online competitive events and there was a Star City Classic, I want to say, and like neither of those decks top 8. I think maybe Grishal Brand did, like the
graveyard one.
The Goryo's Vengeance version. But yeah, I mean like that deck's been around for a while. Neoform like doesn't use the graveyard, so it's harder to disrupt, but it also like is inconsistent and
the thing that I would imagine those decks, I think if it is a problem, Allosaurus Rider is the card that goes away. Like,
yeah, probably.
It's like it's a free card. No one was playing it beforehand. Grishal Brand decks don't go away.
It's from Cold Snap. I mean, like it's really just got a lot of bad stuff going on.
Neoform is like really cool in other decks that it could be doing stuff in. So I don't think and it's a new card that's exciting.
Yeah.
Grizzle Brand, I think, is one of those cards that just like will always be used in decks that are broken, but is not inherently in itself.
Yeah, it's
like there's always just
Grizzle Brand is a cool card.
Yeah. And none of the other cards I think really shout out to me as something that needs to go away.
Yeah, I think it'd be Allosaurus Rider if they were going to ban anything out of that deck. But again, I think it's inconsistent enough that like
Summoner's Pact being banned in a universe, but I don't think that is what
people are gonna. People are going to like play this deck, and if it's really inconsistent, then people are just going to start dropping it, and it's going to be another fringy type thing that you see every once in a while spike a tournament because somebody got really lucky like Grishal Brand, but it's not. I don't think that it's like a huge
problem yet.
Yeah. It could be that the deck is more consistent or people tune it to the point where it's more consistent.
Well, like Amulet Titan, for instance, was what you just described forever. And in fact, when it became a big deal, it wasn't a big deal because a new card was printed into it or anything. It was just that someone at the caliber of, I think it was Sam Black and his roommate Justin. Am I correct with those? I think that sounds right.
Yeah.
I forget Justin's last name. But they both took it to a pro tour, top 8'd with it, and then that was like half the finals. And it had more to do with good players needed to pick it up in a way that supported it.
Tuning,
tuning
like
correctly.
getting all the numbers right is going to be something with these really inconsistent combo decks where like getting all the numbers right and playing the right number of cantrips, playing the right number of combo pieces, sideboarding correctly, like all these things are going to make it so that your win rate's going to go way up, because you're going to find your combo that much more consistently. You're going to be able to execute it.
And the pro community, especially into Modern, has a little bit of a thick head, I've noticed sometimes, where, like, for instance, there'll be tournaments where Merfolk might be the right choice, and then that wins the GP, but everyone kind of talks crap about it ahead of time because they just don't think it's a real deck, and they haven't seen anyone that they take seriously playing that deck. And it took someone...
There's a lot of inertia in Modern?
Right. I think there's a lot of inertia, and a lot of just being like, this looks like a pile of cards that looks bad, and until someone actually does something significant with it, I'm not going to waste my time trying to figure it out when I don't have enough time to test Modern because it's the second tier format that I pay attention to.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Amulet. That's what happened with Lantern. Same kind of deal.
Yeah.
That deck was on the fringe, and then Zach Elsick won a GP with it.
Yeah.
And then top 16 the week before that. So
he also created the deck like a mad scientist in his basement, and then nobody even knew that was something you could do.
Well, I remember. So we top 16 with it, and we had him on to deck tech the deck on the podcast. And the entire time we were just like, "So, what are these decks bad matchups?" He's like, "There are none." I beat everything. This deck is like just the new best friend. We're like, "Okay, sure, buddy." And then literally like a week later, he wins the GP. And we're like, "Well,
yeah.
Guess it had no bad matchups." All right. So that's Celestial Kirin, which I think is odd. And then we get Celestial Kirin, which I think is just fine. I think that card is going to be fine in Modern, and we're not at a point where it's going to be problematic. fourth conversation is the control decks and just the combination of Narset plus Teferi. Like, they just got so many tools in these Planeswalkers in a deck that already wanted to take advantage of Planeswalkers.
Yeah, and Teferi is like such a huge player in Standard. It's interesting to me that the only deck playing it is just like the blue-white control deck that is just more than willing to jam another Planeswalker with the, name Teferi. But it feels like that there's a lot more that can be done with it. I mean, there's a lot of Standard decks that, like, for one thing, are playing no sorceries. And they'll just jam Teferi, even though like that text isn't even relevant. It's the static ability and the ability to bounce stuff. And then there's like decks that are splashing white or splashing blue. There's like green-white decks where like Teferi is the only blue card, and then maybe like Dovin's Veto in the sideboard or something.
Sure.
Or there's like
This isn't Standard.
This isn't Standard.
Yeah.
I'm saying I'm talking about Teferi's impact on Standard.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's like there's all these decks that are bending over backwards to make sure that they can play this card because of its huge impact. And that makes me think that maybe it's being slept on a little bit in Modern. And people are just slotting into blue-white control because it's easy, but maybe there are some new, Bant decks that want to play Teferi with Noble Hierarch or something because he's good with creatures because you can bounce your own value creatures to get, you can bounce your Snapcaster to replay it. You bounce your Snapcaster, draw a card, replay it. In Standard, people are like bouncing their own Frilled Mystic or their own Fibblethip with Teferi to like get value. I feel like there's something there in Modern, and it gives you a lot of combo protection because like your opponents are kind of limited by Teferi's static ability.
Well, and he even combos with cards, right? There's a few cards. Knowledge Pool is the one that's coming to mind, but which is I have seen lists, though I don't know if they've done anything, where they're playing this Teferi and Karn, and then Karn finds Knowledge Pool or Mycosynth to lock them out.
Knowledge Pool has the same mana cost as Mycosynth. Why would you just...
To get them in the... I don't know. They've not done well. These are just things that I've seen people doing.
Yeah, well, and he protects your combo, too.
Yeah.
So if that's the reason I'm thinking like a Bant deck. Like if you're Bant Nightfall or something with the combo, if you have a Teferi out, you can like use it to get value in the early game, and then when you're going off, there's nothing your opponent can do to stop you.
Right. You have freedom to do whatever you want.
Yeah. Oh, and the reason for this is that Teferi says that your opponents can't cast. We have to name what cards do, right? For podcast listeners. Teferi,
New Teferi's static
Teferi
ability.
Time Raveler is the 3 mana planeswalker, starts with 3 loyalty. +1, you can
cast
the next
sorceries.
sorcery you could cast anytime you cast an instant.
Is it
until
the
your
next one?
turn.
It's not in general?
It's the next one until your next turn. Until your next turn, the next sorcery you cast, you can cast as though it had flash. And then he has -3, return target artifact, enchantment, or creature to its owner's hand, draw a card. Oh, maybe he starts at 4 loyalty then, because you can -3 and keep him alive at 1.
Yeah, it starts at 4. So it's +1 until your next turn. You may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. It's all sorcery spells.
And then
it's not just your next one.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
Yeah,
it's Teferi Time Raveler, 1 blue-white, legendary planeswalker Teferi. Its static ability is each opponent can cast spells only any time they could cast a sorcery. Its +1 is until your next turn. You may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. Its -3 is return up to 1 target artifact, creature, or enchantment to its owner's hand, draw a card. It comes in 4 loyalty.
Right. So the +1 is the least relevant ability, but it's not irrelevant. I mean, it allows you to like Thoughtseize your opponent on their draw step, or you can wait for them to like play out more creatures and then Wrath on their end step or Wrath on their attack step or something. Like it allows you to do some cute stuff with that ability, and I think that's one of the reasons people are playing it in these control decks, because it allows them to like Serum Visions on their opponent's end step to like hold up Cryptic better. Like it gives you the plus gives you like little control deck edges, but the other two abilities I just feel like are good in a lot of situations that a control deck is not taking as much advantage of.
I mean,
it even means that like your opponent can't counter your counter spells. Like it just turns all your counter spells into uncounterable because they can't respond to what you're doing.
Well, and like a mana war on a base ability is like already a thing that is like borderline playable, and pretty much anytime they give a mana war a extra bump up in power level, it's done something, if not a lot, in Modern. And so that like Teferi is that plus like 12 other abilities, including the ability to mana war multiple times, including bouncing your own creatures, and you draw a card off of it, and it gets not only creatures but enchantments and artifacts, and like there's just so many additional pieces to that text.
Yeah, just like playing Arena and seeing how much Teferi is affecting Standard, it really feels like there is more to Teferi in Modern than just another planeswalker for the blue-white deck,
right?
To like have in its planeswalker rotation.
And then the other card that is making a really big difference immediately is Narset.
Yeah, she's also mostly showing up in the blue-white control decks. Although you mentioned the Conley Woods brew with the like Days Undoing, Notion Thief, Narset, try and like
just get your wheel yourself, drawing 7 cards, then your opponent draws 0.
Yeah, and it plays Lore Broker. It's just like a 2-mana 0/2 that taps. Each player draws a card. Each player discards a card. So if you have Narset out, you just use it on your opponent's end step once they've already drawn, and then they just discard a card.
They just discard a card and you draw and
discard.
Yeah. So Narset Part of Veils is 1 blue legendary Planeswalker Narset. Each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. -2, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
So you get 2.
5 loyalty.
You get 2 as Cant of the Sunken Ruin activations, which is great.
Really
for
good.
A single for only 3 mana. And then, the players can't draw more than 1 card, like hoses other control decks. Or if you're really taking advantage of it the way Conley Woods does, you can like use Days Undoing to make them shuffle their hand into their
2
library.
and a blue. Each player shuffles their hand and graveyard into their library and draws 7 cards. Exile Days Undoing and then end the turn if it's your turn.
Yep.
Sorcery.
Yeah, so you can like play Narset and then find some stuff, and then the next turn you can Days Undoing to, each player shuffles their hand into their library, your opponent draws 1 card, and you draw 7.
Yep.
Which seems pretty okay.
Yeah.
He's also playing boomerangs in the deck, so you can like end step boomerang their creature
Then
and then
Days
untap Days Undoing and then
so
shuffle it, and like you can boomerang lands in the early game to make sure that you're not dying.
Well, and we were talking about Teferi. Like, there's a reason. I think even like a deck like that playing new Teferi is really good, and it's kind of what the control decks are doing because you can use Teferi to be that boomerang effect to then on your turn wheel or plus Teferi and then do the wheel effect at the end of your opponent's turn at the end of their turn.
Right. So then you get to play your 7 cards first, so you can then like set up Narset Days Undoing again or something,
right.
Or you can like getting to use your 7 cards first is really valuable, which is the reason that Days Undoing isn't just as good as Time Twister, because like it has exactly the same text as Time Twister. All it does is exiles itself and ends the turn if it's your turn when you cast it. But that's such a huge deal because you're giving your opponent 7 cards that they get to use them first. Mm-hmm. But if you get to use your cards first, now it becomes a busted card.
Yeah, or prevent them from drawing them. So like
now
both
it becomes
cards work
a power
with Days
9.
Undoing, which is why Days Undoing became a much more expensive card overnight once War of the Spark was printed. So War of the Spark has been a really powerful effect on the format, and these are just like for the deck. So we can go deeper, and there's just like a bunch of cards that saw play, and I'm gonna bring up War of the Spark just to like
a little bit of Vivian getting played.
Yep.
In some of these like collected company style decks as like a cool control hoser / card advantage engine. There's like a little bit of Saheeli getting played here and there.
Not Mobilized District. Blasting Zone has been a huge addition to the format. A bunch of decks have started playing Blasting Stones. I think Mobilized District is being slept on. Like, I think the fact that it's an artifact creature, a 3/3 that you can sometimes have just available for free, especially out of these control decks. I think the biggest issue with these control decks right now is how many colorless mana sources can they play with. I mean, that's like, I think there's a poll going on right now that Sam Black, I think, again posted that like it comes down to 2 to 3 are like how many you can really get away with. We talked about Ugin's Conjurant, going very quickly through all these cards.
There's a lot of good stuff in this set,
yeah.
But let's touch on what everybody's excited about.
Yeah, the new
Modern
hotness,
Horizons.
Modern Horizons.
We did a little recap of how War of the Spark has affected the format.
Yep.
But that's old news.
I know it's crazy how that's already old news.
What's the new news? Well, because the format was so impactful, it made your guys' set review go over. So we're like a little behind on assessing its actual impact.
Value. Bringing up Mythic.
So long.
Spoiler. New news in order. So I guess the first conversation to have, and it's really relevant to what we were talking about because Modern has gotten such a huge power level boost and is going to be getting an additional one with this set. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we now have a Force of Will variant, Force of Negation, which is...
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing to touch on, especially because a lot of these decks are like looking to combo you with Days Undoing, or they're looking to combo you with Neoform, or they're looking to combo you with Karn the Great Creator, / Mycosynthatus. And any of these all these cards that we mentioned are non-creature artifacts, although I guess if somebody's Ugin's Contranting all your lands, those are both creatures, but a lot of them are non-creature.
Of the 4 things we talked about, it was the worst one.
They're all non-creature spells that your opponent is playing on their own turn.
So for people that don't know, Force of Negation is blue, 1 instant. If it's not your turn. You may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay its spell's mana cost. And then the effect is counter target non-creature spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. So obviously you can't get creatures, which is a big deal. But I think in Modern right now, that doesn't, like, the point of this card and the reason it's exciting is that, like, Modern is so much more on the axis where creatures are not the thing you're worried about. And this being added to the format makes me really want to look at different creature decks, humans being obviously the best aggressive creature deck, I think. But then you even have stuff like just scape shift decks that are just trying to get a Titan into play. Like if you're being prepared to be able to stop their scape shift or something they're doing with counter magic with this card, and they just play Primeval Titan, and this is your main answer to it, it makes it a lot harder.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like it's not clear if this is going to be a huge main deck card or if it's going to be a sideboard card. And there's like a lot of debates amongst Magic players on the internet about whether, this is going to be something that you main deck, and in what decks do you main deck it and what decks do you not. Because, like, you know, the getting 2-for-1ing yourself to counter a spell is definitely a real cost. But in some matchups, it just wins the game. Like, if you just counter their Neoform, they basically discarded their entire hand to put Allosaurus Rider into play and Neoform it. You counter the Neoform, they sacrifice their Allosaurus Rider, they have nothing. You just win.
Yeah.
You 2-for-1 yourself, kind of, but you like 8-for-1 them. or if they're, you know, if they're Amulet Titan and they like play Amulet on turn 1 and you like force a negation that, maybe now their game plan, like it takes them a while to get back on their feet, and that wins you the game.
Right.
But like, you know, like you said, maybe they also just play Primeval Titan and you die.
Right.
So, or they have a second amulet, or they play turn 1 Ancient Stirrings and get an amulet. Like
making you in a situation where it's not a catch-all to everything is more interesting than Force of Will would have been. Like,
for sure.
I'm very appreciative that this card exists, and it also is built in a way that makes it so you can't use it on your turn to protect your own shenanigans.
Right. So it's not like a boon for these combo decks. Like it's not like the
Days or Force of Will protecting what you're doing to stop your opponent. This is much more of this stops opponents from doing the aggressive things they're doing on their turn. This does give a weird boon to Ad Nauseam, because I believe Ad Nauseam can do everything at instant speed.
Yeah, they can go off on their opponent's turn. So that is one thing interesting about the card is if you're a combo deck that's going off on your opponent's turn, you can protect your combo with this. The problem is Ad Nauseam probably isn't playing enough blue cards for this to be good.
Fair. It's playing the Serum Visions Opt combo, isn't it?
It's playing Serum Visions and Sleight of Hand, I think, usually. Maybe, But that's like the only blue cards in the deck.
So, yeah, I guess they would have to increase their blue card count, which
I don't know if
they can, because it's a deck that's pretty streamlined.
You know, if you are a combo deck looking to go off on your opponent's turn, maybe you're a combo deck playing Teferi Time Raveler to make your sorceries instance. then you can protect your combo with this. Or you can quicken your Scape Shift, and then, you know.
So continuing down the run of blue counter spells, because we might as well just get these out of the way. Flusterstorm was added. It's the buy a box promo, so it's not in the set itself. Counter target instant or sorcery spell unless its controller pays 1, and it has Storm, so it can do that a lot. At bare minimum, this is always a hard to counter Spell Pierce. Because it will count the spell that's being cast that it's countering and itself in its storm count.
Right, but it only counters instants and sorceries
versus so you can't counter planeswalkers.
So
this is an interesting one. I don't know if this sees that much play. I think as a sideboard card, it's fine. It
gets played as a sideboard card in Legacy already. I think it's often worse than Spell Pierce, especially because
with the planeswalker decks we were just talking about.
Well, and especially because Storm isn't as big of a player, I feel, as it is in Legacy. But it's good against any combo deck, any deck that's looking to like play and most combo decks are looking to play multiple spells in one turn, right?
Sure.
And so that's when you get the Storm count up, and you can use this to like, you know, counter a key spell. It doesn't have to be Storm combo, even like Grishal Brand or whatever, the Goryo's Vengeance one, where they're like Faithless Looting, discard into, you know, Goryo's Vengeance. Well, now you get 3 copies of this, so they need 3 extra mana because they like cast multiple spells in one turn. So this is good against most combo decks. I don't think it's like way better than Spell Pierce, but there are definitely situations where it's good.
Yeah.
Spell Pierce being able to counter a lot of these, you know, Narsets or Teferis, or like being able to counter Planeswalkers is a big game. Being able to counter Mycosynth Lattice with Spell Pierces might become a bigger game in the future, or Karn the Great Creator. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that this doesn't hit. There's a lot to non-creature spells other than instants and sorceries.
Keep going.
Uh,
All right, so next card. On the counterspell train, Exclude, which is a 2 and a blue counter target creature spell draw card instant. This is kind of a little bit the opposite of Force of Negation. I don't know. I mean, it's a cool reprint. It's going to be great for
Let's just talk
limited.
about stuff we're really excited about.
Okay,
we
fine.
don't have a lot
Fact
of
or
time.
fiction is in the set.
You're gonna do
Fact or fiction
a
in
big
the
set
set.
review with Ben, probably. Maybe I'll be there at some point. And we'll go over all the cards and their fringe applications. But what are we really excited about? I'm really excited about Fact or Fiction. That's a sweet card. You get to draw a bunch of cards. It's a 3 and a blue instant. Reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. So you get to pick. You get the final say. That's the difference between this and other cards that they print that are similar.
Because they've printed. This is a very popular and famously powerful and popular card, and so they've printed
From
a lot
pre-modern,
from
from
pre-modern,
Invasion.
and so they've printed a lot of fixed versions of it or variants on this effect. But almost all of them let your opponent decide which pile you're getting, or are in some way significantly worse than exactly the wording on this card.
Right. It's the fact that your opponent makes the piles, and if they go 4 in one pile and 1, you get to pick. You can pick the 1, right? If that's the card you need, if that's the Path to Exile that kills their lethal threat, you get the final say. So you're only drawing 1 card, but you're drawing exactly the card you need out of 5 cards, and most of the time you're getting more cards. And sometimes you already have the Path to Exile in hand when you cast this. Your opponent puts the Path to Exile by itself, and you're like, I'll take 4 cards.
Yeah,
gotcha.
It's so good at mind games and playing with people that it also is, pros really like the card because it lets them capitalize on their skill at the peak level on both ends of the spectrum. So it's really going to be, it's definitely a fun card to be added to the format.
It rewards knowledge of the format and knowledge of matchups for sure. It being a 4 mana is a little bit rough given that we are talking about the speed of Modern right now.
Yep.
So it's people probably aren't going to play a ton of these. Maybe Blue-White Control will play a couple.
Right.
I am currently working on a Teamer Wilderness Reclamation deck that I will be playing it in, because it's pretty sweet with Wilderness Reclamation when you have a lot of mana.
Yeah. Next exciting card. I don't want to talk too much about it because Ben's going to come on this podcast at some point in the future and going to freak out about it. But Urza, Lord High Artificer. This is a card that is 2 blue, legendary creature, Human Artificer. When Urza, Lord High Artificer enters the battlefield, create a 0/0 colors construct artifact creature token with this creature, gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. So already you're getting value. And then tap an untapped artifact you control to add 1 blue. So it's a variant on Ben's favorite card, Grand Architect. And then 5 mana, shuffle your library, then exile the top card. Until end of turn, you may play that card without paying its mana cost. This goes infinite in a bunch of different ways. It's really dope. People are already talking about it being banned in Commander as a commander after a certain while because it's just going to be that powerful. The most obvious one is that with Thopter Sword combo, he goes infinite. You get infinite mana off of it, and you get infinite Thopters, and you get infinite life, and you can play every single card in your library. And if you can't win after that, then you're playing Magic incorrectly. Beyond that, though, he's just a very good value creature because he does come down. Even if they remove him, you get the 1 mana 1/1 or the 1/1 artifact creature on the side. He is a lot of what Grand Architect.
And that 1/1 artifact creature taps for a mana immediately too, right?
Yeah, correct.
So
you don't have to.
It doesn't. His ability isn't affected by summoning sickness.
Correct.
It's just tap.
So if you have 5
blah,
mana
blah,
and you play that, or if you have another artifact in play, you have counter magic open. The mana doesn't have to be spent on artifact creatures. Grand Architect has that rider, I believe, correct?
Yeah.
And then the last piece is one of the issues with Grand Architect classically is there are a bunch of ways you can go infinite mana with it, but then what do you do with that mana? Urza has that on the card.
Yeah.
Once you have infinite mana, you can just play every card in your deck. Even if you make an absorbent amount of mana, you start just getting free spells into play.
Yeah, and he's got little cute references to former Urza cards like Tolarian Academy. His ability kind of echoes Tolarian Academy, and then Temporal Aperture is the other one from Urza's Saga.
Well, and then Karn is the first one.
Yeah, this is looking like a very time spirally set, which is really awesome.
I believe that the pitch meeting for the set was literally a Time Spiral 2.
Yeah, right.
When they did the
supplemental
hackathon
set, where it's like a Masters in the Masters set slot where it's targeting more enfranchised players, and it's not just like a standard set.
Right.
So I think Giver of Runes is another really exciting one. It's a callback to popular legacy card Mother of Runes.
Core Mom, I'm on all about it.
It's a 1 mana 1/2, costs 1 white. Tap Another target creature you control gains protection from colorless or from the color of your choice until end of turn.
Key part there is that it's another target creature, and key thing you didn't mention is that it's a core cleric and not a human.
Yes, it's not a human. Mother of Runes is a human, which is not relevant in the format that Mother of Runes is in, or at least not incredibly relevant. I'm sure that people have tried to port Modern Humans over to Legacy with varying degrees of success.
Sure.
But the main deck that Mother of Runes is known for being played in, it doesn't really matter. The thing that Mother of Runes does that this doesn't is she can protect herself.
Weird way it did matter. So I was playing, when I played the most Legacy, I was playing Mono Black Blocks, and I had 3 Engineered Plague in my sideboard, and humans was the best thing to call with it against Maverick
That's
decks.
fair.
And
she wouldn't die to Engineered Plague.
Correct.
Because she is a 1/2. She gets the toughness.
No, she dies to every other black removal spell that has ever been created. That's not true, but
is
a lot
mostly
of them.
true. She doesn't die to Dark Blast. You have to do the Dark Blast on my upkeep trick if you want to
draw a card
Dark
to get her.
Blast.
Yep.
But she can't protect herself from removal, which is one thing that Mother of Runes does that's really powerful. But she trades that off for being able to give protection from colorless, which is interesting. It's not. I don't know that that's super relevant in Legacy or in Modern. It is actually more relevant in Legacy, where Eldrazi is a bigger deal.
Well, you have like affinity effects where you're like the ability to block artifact creatures is not irrelevant, and
I guess you can block a Wormcoil Engine and give your creature protection so it does
gain life and doesn't die.
What kind of deck do you think wants to play this in Modern?
I think humans might still play it,
even though it's not a human.
Yeah,
it is a very powerful 1-drop. Especially if you are looking to play a card that was also spoiled, Ranger Captain of Eos, which is
old Captain of Eos,
old Ranger of Eos.
Or Ranger of Eos. Sorry.
1 white human soldier. When Ranger Captain of Eos enters the battlefield, you may search your library for a creature card with a convertiment cost 1 or less. Reveal it, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library, and you can sacrifice it. Your opponents can't cast non-creature spells this turn. It's a 3/3 for 3.
Have you seen the new mocks that literally got previewed while we were recording?
No, I didn't.
So
refresh my page.
So talk about Ranger Captain of Eos, and I'll talk about the new mocks.
Oh, that's a weird card. I don't know if I'm into it. Okay. Ranger Captain of Eos is a card. So it searches for a 1-drop. So, you're like a white not mid-range. You're like a white kind of aggressive creature-based deck if you're playing this card. And you need 1-drops to find that are powerful in the late game. Because when you're playing this, you already have access to at least 3 mana. Your 1-drops, you've probably already played them. And, you don't want like a Noble Hierarch because you already have 3 mana. Your deck probably tops out at 3, or maybe you're playing Collected Company in a deck with this guy. But if you're humans in particular, because this guy's a human, you're finding like Champion of the Parish. But you've already played a bunch of cards, so Champion of the Parish is much worse than it would be on turn 1. But this is a card that is relevant later in the game because it protects all your creatures from removal. Your opponent has to have 2 removal spells if they want to kill anything, except this. It can act as a lightning rod. But if your opponent's killing this instead of your, freaking out of control Thalia's Lieutenant that's beating them up, you're fine with that. And then it also can, get your creatures through blockers, including colorless blockers now. If your opponent just plays a blocker, you can give one of your creatures protection and swing through.
Right.
So it is a little bit more relevant in the late game than maybe a Noble Hierarch or a Champion of the Parish.
Well, and then moving out of the world of humans, I mean, Collected Company combo decks. Now that effect becomes much more relevant because you can search for Viscera Seer, which is the main, Viscera Seer, which is the main sack outlet that's available, and
but
that's
even
really
if
good.
You're not comboing, I mean, I've seen a good number of just mid-range Collected Company decks, and I think this is a card that definitely goes into there, especially like the Knight of the Reliquary ones. I've seen ones with Knight of the Reliquary that are, both comboing with the Bant Nightfall combo, or just like a mid-range Collected Company with Knight of the Reliquary as a big beater, and giving Knight of the Reliquary protection from your opponent's blockers, like if they have a bunch of young Pyromancer tokens or something, and you're like protection from red get you for 9, they're like, what? How does a young Pyromancer deck beat a 9/9? They have to have Fatal Push with Revolt or something, or else they're just gonna get beaten up.
Well, and you have Grim Lavamancer as another card to kind of search with it as well. There's a few 1-mana humans and other kind of 1-mana effects that are definitely powerful. But then I do think obviously the new
gives
core
you some flexibility with your sideboard, because
really
Grim Lavamancer can become an okay sideboard card.
Yep.
That you would side in just one, but you find it with your Knight Captains you're already playing.
Yep.
I mean, you don't often have cards in your graveyard as humans, but
Yes,
There
I think
is
in
a
humans
deck
it's not necessarily the
where
best.
that's
but,
good, maybe.
Well, like Soul Sisters, this card's amazing.
Oh,
you
yeah,
get
Soul
Sarah
Sisters for
Senders,
sure.
you get Martyr, and then you get
that's like a deck that's focused on playing tons of one drops, and they already were playing Ranger of Eos a lot of the time.
Yeah,
and
and
this
this
is
is
for a
just-
Death Shadow with this guy. Is that good?
Yeah, I think that is good.
That was
I
one of my
think
favorite things when people were playing like 4 or 5 color Death Shadow.
You get
when that deck was really popular. When that deck was really popular, you could like sideboard into Ranger of Eos in like grindy matchups and just like get 2 Death Shadows. Beat this.
So yeah, so I think that like obviously that card's really exciting. The new Mox, because we should talk about it. Mox Tantalite, literally was preview while we were talking. So you're getting our immediate opinions where I'm more excited than Michael is. Suspend 3, 0 cost. Rather than cast this card from your hand, you may pay 0 and exile it with 3 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter. When the last is removed, cast it without paying its mana cost. It is you can't cast it otherwise. You have to use Suspend.
What's that?
I said a swear word, which you're not allowed to do. We're fine. Moving on. Mox Tantalite, add, and then, so you can't cast it from your hand, and then it can tap to add
It has
1
no
mana of
cost.
any color.
You can cast from your hand if you're creative, but it has no mana
Yes,
cost.
it has no mana cost. So there's different ways to get this into play that's cheaty. The question is getting a Mox into play. Cheating into play is generally not worth it.
Yeah. I would also say waiting 3 turns to put it into play is also not worth it.
Right, because at that point, you can just pay mana.
Like, if I were playing a deck that wanted this card, where, like, you're looking to have an extra mana on turn 4 to go off, why would I play this instead of Lotus Bloom? Like,
You want Lotus Blooms 5 through 8.
but it's only 1 mana. I mean, the difference between a Mox and a Lotus is, like, Lotus is better for, like, an explosive combo because you get 3 mana right on the turn that you need it.
Mm-hmm.
A Mox gives you that mana every single turn.
Right.
But so it's generally less explosive. The thing about this card is that, you know, you're getting the extra mana in 3 turns. So like, why are you willing to wait 3 turns to have 1 extra mana unless you're like doing something explosive?
Right.
And if you're doing something explosive, I would rather have 3 extra mana.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, you don't need it every single turn. Like, if I'm ad nauseum, I don't need an extra mana every single turn. I need extra mana on the turn I'm going to win the game.
So, next card. And it's 5 cards.
Yep.
And it's Horizon Canopy, but in enemy colors.
Yeah, that's wild. I never thought that they would do this. Like, people would say to me, you know, like, we talk about cards, speculating on whatever. And it's like, you know, I would have conversations with people that were like, well, do you think they're going to finish all the Future Sight cycles? And I would always say, I think Grove of the Burn Willows, they probably won't finish because it would be busted.
It's too powerful.
And then I would say Horizon Canopy, they'll never finish because it's busted.
Yeah.
And here they are
Finishing it.
I mean,
Or doing half.
Yeah.
There's now 6 out of 10.
Given these lands, it makes me think that they would finish it eventually in, you know, Modern Horizons 2 or whatever.
Right. Or, yeah. So, like, the interesting statistic that Saffron Olive posted, I think
Sure.
it was who it was, is that right now Horizon Canopy is the 5th most played lands after Bloodstained Mire and 3 basics.
Which is wild.
Which is insane. And the fact that we are now getting 5 of them that are better in color.
Green-white is not even the most popular color combo
Right.
by a long stretch, but it's like, it's just good enough that it goes in a lot of white decks, a lot of green decks.
Yep. You
And
just play it anyways, and you get it. And now I like another card I'm excited about that I'll talk about, but like if I'm playing a green-black deck, I just get a card that matters, like both to fix my mana and to draw cards off of it.
So I have a question. So let's metagame. Modern Horizon comes out. Everybody's excited about all these new hot stuff. They're playing all these lands that deal them damage, and they're playing like Force of Negation and whatever to like beat these combo decks. And you're like, what, don't you just play Burn?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. They also got Burn
Everybody's
has a bunch
like
of new
taking a
tools,
bunch
too.
of everybody's just taking a bunch of damage off their new hot Horizon canopies, and you're just like lava spiking them.
There was a new card. What's the new card that Burn got that was like really powerful?
Is it Tybalt? Just kidding. Tybalt's not that good.
No,
It could be a
no,
sideboard
no.
though. I don't know.
New Tybalt is not the worst. Well, these lands are really good in burn, I think is part of it. Was actually, I think, the part of the conversation.
Yes. The red ones are very good, especially the red-white one, because it helps you
burn
splash
does
your
not
sideboard
care about their
cards.
life total, and they get to sacrifice it to play things. And yeah, they play.
Yeah, so these are generally better in aggressive decks. Like, I think the main deck playing Horizon Canopy in Modern is humans. It also shows up in like decks that can search for a land, because it turns your search for a land into a card if you need to be finding a specific card. So like Amulet will play it because they can like search for Horizon Canopy,
And then Boggles plays it because it's
and then Boggles plays it because they're also an aggro deck,
and they're an aggro deck. And they have a lot of life gain already attached to kind of what they're
like
doing.
Knight of the Reliquary decks usually play it because they are either aggressive, but even if they're more mid-rangey, you can search for it with Knight of the Reliquary, so you can turn your Knight of the Reliquary search into a card draw.
I think it was just the fact that they would play this. Aria of Flame is the only other card, which is they gain 10 life, but then every instant or spell you cast plus that does a bunch, like storms off kind of. I don't think
I don't think so.
That's not.
I don't know
that
that Burn is necessarily getting new tools, but if everybody's
it's getting Sunbaked Canyon.
Yeah, Sunbaked Canyon is pretty strong for Burn because they're very susceptible to mana flood.
Right. And then I think the last card, some last cards I want to talk about that we've talked a lot about beforehand. One of them is Planebound Accomplice, 2 and a red, human wizard, 1/3. 1 red, you may put a Planeswalker card from your hand onto the battlefield, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So we talked a lot about this yesterday with Cloudstone Curio, and any Planeswalker that makes more than 2 red mana. So 2 or more red mana, and another Planeswalker, you get infinite of that other Planeswalker's activated abilities, and then if it's 3 or more red mana, you get infinite mana. And the way this works is you have Cloudstone Curio in play and this wizard in play. You pay 1 red mana, say let's use Chandra,
Torch of
Defiance, which is the 4 mana Chandra from
Kaladesh.
Kaladesh, that's plus ability is make 2 red. Or its 0 ability is make 2 red?
It's +1.
It's +1 is make 2 red. You make 2 red. You then use one of those red to put a different Planeswalker in play. Let's say it's... What's a good Planeswalker for this? The original Chandra, the 5 mana
Chandra
one.
Nalar.
That pluses the ping 1 damage to target player.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
You ping them. Then Cloudstone Curio triggers, you return... the original Chandra back. You then use the remaining red mana to bring that back, bringing the second Chandra back to your hand, and you go off, going infinite damage.
Yep.
So finally, Chandra Nalar seeing play in Modern, except that there's just way better Planeswalkers to do this with, and I don't know how good this is in general, but...
Yeah, it's like pretty clunky multi-card combo, but it's definitely something interesting that you can do with this card, because like a lot of the time, just putting a Planeswalker in for 1 activation is like not really worth the trouble.
Sure.
Like 1 mana for a given Planeswalker activation is probably worth it on like almost any Planeswalker. But the fact that it requires this creature to do it, and then you're also like
Needed Cloudstone Curio in play to go.
Well, I'm
go
just
off.
saying, even if you don't need Cloudstone Curio, I think that's the most interesting application for this card.
I could see a deck like Skred Red, that already is playing Chandra, Torch of Defiance, and Koth, both cards that go infinite with this combo.
Because Koth minuses to make mana equal to your mountains. Yeah.
And adding Karn, which I would be surprised if I saw a Skred list that didn't have the new Karn in play that lets you get cards from your sideboard.
Okay. It's a lot of 4-drops.
Sure. Then putting 1 Cloudstone Curio in your deck, and you're playing this guy in there. Just like some games, you'll go infinite because you have those pieces, and the actual cost to do so is pretty low. It seems feasible. Now I don't know if that's good.
This guy's pretty bad when you don't have a Curio in that deck, though.
Well, you said before, like I would pay 1 mana.
None of those
I'd have
walkers have a good enough ability, though.
Chandra draws you cards. Koth makes a 4/4.
She exiles the top card, and you can cast it until end of turn. It's like not even draw a card.
Sure.
So you'd like cycle your Chandra, maybe.
Fine. Okay. So maybe it's not good enough. It does a lot though. It goes infinite. That's a combo.
That is a combo.
That is playable with cards that are already seeing play. Like that's the fact that like that deck is already playing 2 of the pieces it needs, and you just need to like figure out how to fit this piece in Cloudstone Curio.
Yeah.
Is not makes it seem more interesting to me than not.
Oh, so another card I'm excited about is Goblin Matron.
Yes.
So one of the reasons I'm excited about Goblin Matron is that...
I think this will be the last card we'll talk about today.
Okay. So I don't think that like aggro goblins like you used to see in Legacy, it's like not even really good enough for Legacy anymore.
It hasn't been for years.
Yeah, but they get access to Goblin Ringleader, which is like a huge card draw engine,
Right.
and they get access
which reveals the top 4 cards of your library, and you put all
like that.
goblins in your hand.
Yeah. And
Goblin
they get
Lackey.
access to Goblin Lackey.
Which we have Warren Instigator in Modern right now, but it's 1 mana for a 1/1 goblin that when it does damage to a player, you put a goblin from your hand into play.
Right. So you have tons of card draw in the form of Ringleader. You have tons of mana, basically, in the form of Goblin Lackey, which gives the deck a lot of resilience. You also have Wasteland, which can, keep your opponent off of mana to give you a little bit more time to like put your ridiculous goblin synergy into play. And that's what makes it potentially more powerful than a burn deck, is that you get to put pressure on their mana and you get to effectively draw a bunch of cards and make a bunch of mana with Lackey.
Right.
But you don't get to do any of that stuff in Modern because none of those 3 cards are legal. And I'd say they're the 3 key cards, most important cards in Legacy.
Yet. We have the rest of these 2 tracks to see what's going to come out. We don't know what there is. I would be surprised if another one of those goblin cards isn't in this set.
Yeah, I mean, it's true.
Like
because
Ringleader more than Lackey. I can see them being a little wary of Lackey, and Warren Instigator exists instead of Lackey, so they might feel like, you have some of the pieces.
That's true. But as it stands right now while we're recording this episode, those 3 cards don't exist. The reason I'm excited about Matron is not because of a deck like that. The reason I'm excited about Matron...
decks?
Stop this, Alex. is for like goblin combo decks that are using Skirk Prospector, like you said, or Goblin War Chief or something like that, because this allows you to search for your combo pieces.
Right.
And it is also a goblin that you can sack to Prospector. It's a goblin that you get the discount from War Chief. Like, this does a lot for like cool goblin combo decks, which I'm about. I was the one who did all the research for the show before I was appearing regularly on the show, but I did all the research for the show when you guys spoiled Skirk Prospector. Right. That was your preview card, right? Yeah, so you guys were like, what are we going to say about Skirk Prospector? And I'm like...
Fecundity.
Yeah, so yeah, like these sweet Fecundity combos, the Goblin Matron is like a really key piece, I think, for these combos. And, Fecundity Skirk Prospector is one big one, but I'm sure there's other cool stuff you can do with Goblin Matron to search for like...
So for people that don't know, because there's a previous episode, Skirk Prospector is 1 red mana, make a goblin, that you can sacrifice a goblin to make 1 red mana.
It is a goblin, it doesn't make it. It is a 1/1 goblin for 1 red.
Sure, yeah. I guess said that.
You used a weird, yeah.
Sure, yeah. It is a 1/1 goblin for 1 red that you can sacrifice a goblin to make 1 red.
Yep.
And then Fecundity is an enchantment for green and 2 that whenever a creature dies, you draw a card.
Yes.
And so you can, with those 2 cards in play, not go infinite, but kind of go infinite, and then find a way to do damage to kill them.
Yeah, you like play a bunch of goblins, make a bunch of mana. You like play cards that make as many goblins as they cost mana-wise. So you're playing like, like Mog War Marshal, which makes 3 goblins effectively. So you're like
playing a ritual off of it.
It turns into Desperate Ritual, draw 3 cards, and you're like drawing a bunch of cards, and then you're like playing Empty the Warrens once you've like drawn a bunch of cards and made a bunch of mana. So then you just get like 10 goblins, and you just like sack them all to make a ton of mana.
I think you play 1 Great Shot in the deck.
And then you just win.
And you win, yeah.
And so Goblin Matron searches for your Skirk Prospector. While you're going off, it guarantees gas. Because it basically is a 2-for-1 in that situation, because you get to sack it to draw a card, but you also, it drew you a card and it picked the card. So you draw your Mog War Marshal, you play that. Now you've like gone up even higher up on cards to like increase the consistency of the deck a lot. Yep. So I think it increases the consistency of the deck before you combo because it searches for your combo pieces, and it also increases the consistency of the deck while you're comboing because it allows you to not whiff off the top of your deck because it like...
Oh, okay. Apparently it's official that Counterspell is not in the set. I can't watch the video. Yeah, I kind of predicted that. I shot called that earlier. Part of it was just like with Force of Will.
Force of Negation,
Flusterstorm, and Portent, which we didn't talk about, but is the 2-mana counterspell that they're printing that we'll talk about.
Prohibit, you mean?
Prohibit.
Portent is a different card.
What's Portent?
Portent is what Legacy Miracles
like,
plays now.
Got it.
It's slow cantrip ponder.
Got it. Okay, not Portent.
So you draw a card in the beginning of the next upkeep, and then it's like instant speed ponder where you look at the top 3, you put them back in any order, and then you may shuffle.
Got it. This is a card that Ben was excited about when the new ban list for Highlander Roulette happens.
Highlander Gauntlet.
Yeah, Highlander Gauntlet. moving on. So they've previewed basically a powerful counterspell at like all these effects.
What
What
are we talking about when we say powerful counterspell, Alex? We're talking about Prohibit.
Prohibit.
It is 1 and a blue instant. Counter target spell if its converted mana cost is 2 or less. Then it has Kicker for 2. If it was kicked, counter that spell if its converted mana cost is 4 or less instead.
Right.
So the main mode is 1 and a blue, counter target spell if its converted mana cost is 2 or less.
Yep.
So it's like a little bit of a extra mana for a spell snare, but you get a ton of flexibility.
Yeah, I think this was a big sign that Counterspell was not going to be in the set. And I'm
That's
assuming that the reason they know Counterspell isn't in the set is because they've done the like there's a way using numbers and the name of sets and how things are ordered alphabetically to know if a card has available slot in the set. And so yeah.
Craig is over there letting us know that foil Genesis is $100 because they spoiled Genesis.
Oh yeah.
But
I don't think it's going to see any play in Modern.
It's not going to see any play. I don't know why it would spike. Is there like a
I
combo
mean,
that we're
maybe you
not
play
thinking
one of to be able to like fog someone out of the game.
I guess Spore Frog. I mean, maybe there's like some weirdo Genesis deck, combo deck, but card is pretty clunky.
Yep. We didn't talk about one card that I said we were talking about. Ayula's Influence. Green enchantment. Discard a land card. Create a 2/2 green bear creature token. I think this might be my favorite card in the set.
I like this because like a lot of these Seismic Assault decks, it feels like if you're not going all in to like kill them with Seismic Assault with a combo, it's like a little weak.
Yeah, so
But
2
making
damage to a
2/2
random thing is not as good as making a 2/2. Like a 2/2 does more than 2 damage, arguably over time.
Unless you're comboing.
Plus it blocks, unless you're comboing off. And I think I would much rather play a 2/2 for one card than Shock.
Totally.
And the other piece of the problem that I've noticed is that like triple red is really hard to accomplish in those decks because there's not a lot of reasons to be playing triple red. Versus you can now just do a black-green or a black-green-white deck that's playing this land thing, so you can play like Knight of the Reliquary and this and get Rog or other combo pieces with Loam. Like the main piece that this goes with is Life in the Loam, and so those two together are now in mono green.
And that's true. You actually like you can just grind a lot of decks out by just like having tons of 2/2 blockers and blocking. That hadn't even occurred to me as much because you can use Seismic Assault to kill creatures, but like if your opponent has a Gurmag Angler, you have to discard 3 lands to kill it. Or you just make 3 bears, chump block, hit them for 4, make more bears.
Yep.
Like
you're just like 1 bear every turn, and then you have 2 extra bears that you're getting up with the Loam combo. Like I think just like being able to block with it is like a much stronger ability than just Shock.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I think this makes that type of deck a little bit more of a viable thing.
Yeah.
There's a few pieces missing still, I think, but we'll see what we get by the end of the set, and we'll know more by the end of the last 2 weeks. Do you think the cycle lands are in this set?
It's possible. We saw the Astral Drift.
Oh, yeah. Which
Astral
is the new...
Drift is not a card that I'm excited about because, there's not a lot of good cycling cards in Modern. It says whenever you cycle it or cycle another card while it's on the battlefield, you may exile target creature. If you do, return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. And it's a 3 mana enchantment, 2 and a white. And it has cycling for 2 and a white.
So this is a version of
Astral Slide,
which is
which was
favorite.
from Onslaught. And it was like a really popular standard deck that was fueled by 1 mana cycling cards, and namely 1 mana cycling lands from Onslaught because they...
you're now paying 1 mana for this effect and drawing a card versus 2 mana, which is currently available with the deserts or the mana
creatures,
fixes.
but you can also like exile a creature on your opponent's end step. It doesn't come back till your end step, so you like get free attacks. You can like disrupt your opponent's creatures, but there's just not enough good cycling cards in Modern. Especially like 1 mana cycling cards. There's some from Amonkhet, but most of them aren't playable.
Right.
The thing about lands is like you need lands anyway. The fact that they ETB tapped is not a big deal. And we have cycling lands in Modern.
We have 2 sets. We have the mana fixing ones, which are pretty close to good enough. Like I've definitely messed with those. And they're like kind of the accompanying effect to the now lands that you play in Sacrifice to draw a card.
The ones from Amonkhet, right?
The Amonkhet ones. And then you have the desert ones that are monocolor, but it's a colored mana source and a colorless mana source.
Yeah, but they're all 2 mana to cycle.
Yeah, which is
and
not
then there's
good
like
enough.
Hieroglyphic Illumination is playable in Modern, and there's like there's like Street Wraith is playable in Modern.
Yep.
And then there's like all the creatures Living End plays, but if you're not recurring them out of their graveyard, they're like pretty bad.
Well, I think Living End
5
might,
mana,
like
3/3s and stuff.
I think there's a argument for a white Living End that's playing this as like a weird additional game plan.
Yeah, maybe.
Especially
I
since
don't
not
know
like
if it's
playing on
strong
the graveyard.
enough.
Fair. It's fair.
But I will say that if they're printing this card and they want people to be excited about it for Modern, the 1 mana cycling lands
Would be a big game.
Is the way to do it.
Yep.
It'll get people a little bit
So
more
hopefully,
excited.
knock on the wood, that we get it. That made all the sound for everyone. So cool. All right. So that's it for the episode. I wanted to thank Michael for coming on. Thank everyone for listening. Make sure to check it out on YouTube if you haven't tried that out. This episode is going to be a little weird because our editor is out of town. So we're not going to have the card art. We apologize. That's why we were making a little bit more of a better effort at reading all the card names. And
Hopefully it was a good
enough
effort.
job. But we did like 3 years of not doing that. So I apologize, world. The episode obviously will be audio format. It's available on iTunes and all the other places you can get it. Collected.company is the best place to kind of find it as a website page. Make sure to check out the Facebook group. It's the largest Magic Modern Facebook group out there. Also, look the official Spark group. I've accidentally last night while tweeting at like 1 a.m. invented a new format that apparently people are appreciative of, which is Commander, but you can play as Planeswalkers as Commander along with legendary creatures, and is built to be a you can play with Commander players. It's just Commander. Check that group out as well. And make sure to follow us at Twitter. I'm at the MMCast as a podcast. I personally am at Kess Wiley.
I'm at Dudard, Dudardd. And other host who's not here, Ben, is at Ben Bateman Media.
On everything, like Instagram. If you want to see just how handsome he is, you can find him on
it's
Instagram.
good.
He's
Good
very
Instagram
handsome.
Follow.
We are also going to be at GP Seattle or Magic Fest Seattle. We are doing a live show there, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. We're looking forward to see everyone there. Make sure to tune in next Monday. The episode is going to come out at 9 a.m. on Monday for our official Modern Horizons previews card. It's awesome.
It is an awesome card.
And I'm excited for you to see how excited I am.
I'm like the naysayer on the show compared to like Alex and Ben, but it's a really cool card.
Yep.
I'm really excited about it.
It's fascinating. Yeah, I'm normally the naysayer. You've out naysayed me.
Yeah.
Sorry. All right. Thank you guys. See you guys next week. Bye.